Disclaimer: the entirety of this video is strictly my personal opinion as well as a breakdown of my current outlook on the game I am talking about. This video should not be taken as a sign to witch hunt or harass any developer working on Forsaken currently. I especially do not make this video with the intention of catering to anybody's negativity bias, as I firmly believe great things can come out of this game and I want to see it and its community change for the better. All I ask is for those watching this to seriously take into consideration what I have to say and potentially even get a discussion about their own outlook on the game going in the comments below. We all play a huge part in whether or not something changes for the better after all. With all that said, thank you for listening. On to the video. Hey yo, I'm Django, and welcome back to the channel, comrades. To get straight to the point, Forsaken is in a very unfortunate spot right now. With the revelation Soul is still on the team receiving 25% of the game's profits, and Hideko lied to the remaining player base claiming that Soul was gone and they weren't making more money than the rest of the developers, by the way, right under our noses. I'm not going to make this entire video about how disappointed I am in Hideko or how infuriating it was for me personally to find out about this news back when it was relatively new, as there have been several other creators who have made far better, more well-rounded videos on the subject than I could ever make. No, instead I'm making this video as a way to describe my worries for several things related to this game. Its future, whether the direction it's heading in is positive or not, and moreover, what we as a community can do to, as Sharky Leo says, stamp out Soul. Yes, I'm relatively late to this whole thing, but I'd much rather speak up against a terrible person and stand with the countless victims affected by people like Soul than concern myself with how early I am to jump onto the first opportunity to talk about something as if I were a vulture preying on anything I can get a hold of. Soul-driven love's horrendous deeds should not go forgotten. They are irredeemable in every sense of the word, and if you still support them after everything they have been proven to be doing, I not only exempt you from my spaces, but I pray to God you feel any level of shame in what it is you're actively doing. Now, with all of that out the way, let's get into the first section of this video, starting off with... I know what one may be thinking currently. Django, you're seriously concerned about the direction the game's headed in? How so? Well, viewer, my reason for this is fairly simple. With the sheer amount of dramas that pop up, community-wide negativity, odd if not outright bad developer decisions, and even the length of time there is between every new update that isn't just another case of what I like to call skinception. All of these, as well as many other variables, have, in my opinion, been the direct result of why active player numbers are as steep as they are currently. Bear in mind, Forsaken used to get well over 200,000 concurrent players very consistently. Nowadays, the game's active player numbers struggle to barely make it past the 130k mark. It is for this reason, as well as what I've listed before, that primarily make up why I am as concerned as I am for the future of the game. So many people have dropped out of this game after the recent controversy that I can't help but wonder what the devs will do with it in the future. Will they sell it off to some big company that will actively ruin it? Are they going to have to keep Soul around until their NDA expires, creating even more undeserved disdain towards the other developers? What if all of this is far too much for even them to handle, that they just cut the cord on their amazing passion project altogether? Perhaps this is just an overload of fear overtaking common sense, but it seriously does worry me that a game already notorious for its commonality of controversy is now caught up in so much of it, the game itself is being actively negatively impacted by it. Maybe the game will be perfectly okay. Maybe it'll just have less of a reputation than it does currently. Even if the latter is the case, I still don't see much of anything positive coming out of Soul still receiving any amount of money from the game. The only way I could see this getting even worse would be if Soul themselves ended up making a laughably bad response document on Twitter before promptly disappearing to make even more profits off the game. Oh wait, never mind, they did just that. Okay, back to the point. To put it simply, I'm more concerned as to what the devs have planned in terms of what's going to be done with the game as a result of the most recent and arguably biggest drama surrounding Forsaken yet. Sure, there's been several times before where the developers, even in the worst of dramas, were able to push through and the game was able to survive as a result. Although that was the case before, I can't help but wonder if that will be the case now. At the same time, however, I am willing to admit that all of this is purely up to the devs. It does suck to think about any possible outcomes to the game, but I also realize that at the end of the day, those outcomes are simply that. Possible. Not certain outcomes, not set in stone outcomes, nothing like that. They're only possible. This is a question that's fairly hard to give a surefire answer to, in my opinion, as it's one that has 1,000 different answers to it. A lot of people will answer this with negative because the game is losing its identity actively, while others would answer with positive because there's still a steady flow of players. At this rate, I personally feel like my answer would be heavily mixed. On one hand, it can be fairly simple to look at Forsaken and Trauma in the same concoction and go, yep, looks like another typical day at the office. On the other hand, the game's reputation has suffered a massive strike, big enough to discourage people from even playing the game anymore. The more I sit here writing my script and thinking about this whole thing, the more I start thinking even if this drama is, once again, the biggest one we've had this year alone, and the community manages to move on from this whole thing, there's still going to be a massive chunk of the game's, and by extension, the developer's reputation missing. I can almost guarantee that there's at least one person watching this right now who would love to look back on this game in 10 years and think, man, that game was awesome. But with a lie as big as the one Hideko perpetuated, what we're going to end up thinking instead will probably be, man, that game was awesome. Developers were so painfully dishonest, though. Even if the other developers played no direct part in telling the lie Hideko did, it still kind of falls back onto them, whether there's an NDA in place or not. It's an unintentional and equally unfortunate case of silence speaks volumes, is what I'm trying to say. The game's forever going to have that sour, tarnishing part of its history etched into the memory of its players, probably forever. Despite that, though, I can only really hope the rest of the game's lifespan will be mostly positive. In my honest opinion, the act of stamping out Soul isn't just something the developers need to do. It's something we, as a collective community, need to do in unison with the devs. Sure, it's a task that seems a lot easier said than done, especially when taking into consideration what can and can't be done legally, as well as what could potentially be explicitly stated in their non-disclosure agreement. So what can we do that wouldn't outright break any laws, you might be asking? I think, and this may not be the most effective way of going about it, but I think that protesting against Soul specifically should be the first step. The more we make our voices heard, the better of a chance we have at not only making this a more known situation, but also straight up getting Soul off of the developer team. And there is indeed a variety of ways you can go about this, even in places you might not expect. Perhaps you could tell your IRL friend group about this whole thing and inform them on what they could do about this, assuming they feel the need to do something about it as well. You could announce this in a Discord server, even if it has less than 100 members. That's still spreading a message to several people. Do this however you can, on whatever platform is available to you. Post something like #StampOutSoul on Twitter, spread it around on TikTok, spread the word on Reddit, assuming you have a nearby hazmat. Basically, just spread the word wherever is most possible for you personally. For those who want to have a more widespread effect against people like Soul, I highly recommend donating to the charity Sharky Leo put in his most recent YouTube fundraiser section next to his videos. I have personally donated myself, and I highly encourage you to do the same. If not for the sake of driving Soul away, then please, for the sake of the countless victims of people like Soul. Thank you. If you sat through all that yapping, then thank you. It isn't often that I ever want to publicly speak on something, regardless of the type of platform I currently have, but if I did end up doing that, I wanted to put much more effort into doing so than I did with my previous video, which if you haven't watched yet, we don't talk about that one. Anyways, one more section, and I promise the video will be over. This one is for those who want a bit of an explanation as to why it took me 10 weeks to get this video posted. First and foremost, I do genuinely apologize if I came off as uninformed, passive-aggressive, or really no better than, say, the average Forsaken player, but in my defense, this entire video's existence was one elaborate build-up. From the sheer ignorance of most Forsaken players you run into, all the way up to the current state of the game leaving a sour taste in my mouth. When I originally sat down to create this video, I was at a point where I seriously couldn't stand even joining a Forsaken server anymore, and I was more than prepared to make my next and initially final video be an overly aggressive mess directed at almost every aspect of the game. The developers, the community, the balancing, all of that. At some point, however, I took a step back, seriously self-reflecting before I made my final decision. That's when I decided to seek advice from another YouTuber who makes videos on an entirely different game and is, in my opinion, one of the most underappreciated content creators on the platform. If it weren't for the talented and overall amazing content creator Twinsmate Sage, I honestly don't think I would have finished this project, much less scrap the original version of it and work on the video you're watching right now. Sage, if you're watching this, I genuinely cannot thank you enough for what you did. It still seriously does mean a lot to me that you would come to me about that. As for the rest of you, thanks for watching. I hope to see you in the next video. If I don't see you there, then I'll see you when I see you. Take care, comrades.